This is the story of how the white buffalo calf pipe came to the Itazipco-Lakota people. A long time ago, among the Itazipco-Lakota people, winter was coming, and this group was having not too good luck finding food. They were, their food supplies were getting low, and they were starting to get worried. They couldn't find any buffalo near their area, and before they wanted to go to another Lakota group for help, they decided to go out one last time. So they sent out their warriors in groups of two. And in this one particular group, there were these two guys, and they were going out, and they were climbing the hills and looking around to see if they could see anything. And one time on this one hill, they saw something really peculiar out in the distance. And they saw this woman. And back then, that's pretty strange to see a woman out in the middle of nowhere by herself. And so she seemed to be coming their direction. And they got kind of, were interested in to see what was going to happen. And she eventually approached them. And she was a very beautiful woman. And it was interesting that one guy, he said to his companion, he said that there's something strange about this lady. She's Wakhan. There's something special about her. And the other guy, it was kind of interesting for him because he didn't see her the same way the first guy did. The second guy seen her in such a way that he wanted to do something bad to her, something selfish for his own personal pleasure. And the woman, she knew the thoughts of both of the men. And so she approached the second one. And, she told the second guy, she said, to go ahead and try to do what you want to do. And the first man, he said, don't do it. Don't do it. She's sacred. Be careful. But the second man, he didn't pay attention. He just wanted to satisfy himself for pleasure. So he reached out and he was going to touch her. And this cloud came down and covered both of these two, this woman and this second man. And there were all kinds of noises and really, spine-tingling screams coming out of this cloud. And all this was happening during the daytime. And the first man, he heard this, and he also saw like flashes of light, coming out of there, and almost like lightning. And after a short time, the cloud went back up, and the lady was standing there, and she was still the same, and the second man, was laying on the ground, but the only thing was that he was all a skeleton. But it was interesting that his hair was still attached. It was still the way it was when he was alive. And also there were some snakes and some other animals that were, going through his ribs. And up until that time, those snakes and those animals, they never were in that part of the country. And now they are, and they're still there. So the lady approached the first man, and the first man, he was scared, but he wasn't scared, like she was a monster or anything. He already knew that this lady was sacred, and so he was scared because he wanted to show only respect, and this lady knew that, and so she told him, that he was walking on the right road. He was walking on the Chonguwakhan, the holy road, the red road. And she said that he was living a good life, and it was good that he was providing for his people and protecting them and loving them, and he was being a good husband, and he's being a good father, and he's being a good son. And so she told him to continue to be that way. And then she told him to tell, to go home and to tell his people that she was going to come to see them. And she said that the Wakantranka heard their prayers, and that they know that they're going through a hard time. And so she's going to deliver a message from the Wakantranka to his people. And she said that when she comes, and she's going to come on a hill, and she's going to appear on the hill on the east side of their camp. And she told them to, be prepared. She told them what preparations that they were supposed to make. And she said that the signal for her to appear is they're going to see some small cloud, on top of this hill. It's going to be really peculiar. And then, so she told him to go and don't look back. And, he really felt good about the whole thing. For one thing, he felt really blessed and humble that he could be in the presence of something this wakhan, and that this lady was from, she was coming from the Wakantranka. She was their messenger, and he really felt, he felt really good about that. So he had, all of a sudden he had all this strength, and it was probably what they call adrenaline. But he just ran and ran and ran, and he got home, and he told his people, they knew something was happening to this man. At first they noticed he didn't, they were sad at first because they saw that he didn't have any food, but they knew something was going on. So the leaders of the camp, and they came to him, and the medicine man, the holy man, and they asked him what happened, and he was catching his breath, and he was drinking water. He was really, trying to calm down. He was so excited. He just came from the presence of a holy, holy woman. And he was almost speechless. He didn't know what to say. First, he wanted to say all these things that he saw, that he experienced, and he wanted it all to come out at once. That's how excited he was. And at the same time, he was crying. So the people were really in amazement, and they were in, wondering. And finally, he came to establish some calmness inside of himself. And he told the holy man, he said, I have a message for you. And he began to relay the story, everything that happened to them. And he told what happened to that man, the second man, that he's no longer alive. And he told them the signal that they were supposed to look out for. He told them the preparations they were supposed to make. And one of them preparations was they were to get several teepee poles, several teepees, and put them all together and arrange it in such a manner that it forms this huge lodge. It doesn't necessarily look like a teepee, but it's a really big lodge. And they were supposed to leave an entrance on the east side, and they were all supposed to sit in a certain way. And so they did everything that they were supposed to do. And then they were waiting. They had a person watching, looking up towards that hill every morning, all day. And then they would take turns. And finally, on this one morning, they knew something was different about this morning. And then the guy who was watching that hill, he came running into the camp, and he was announcing to everybody, there's something going on that hill. She's here now, So everybody got out of their teepees and jumped out of their sleep, and they were all excited, and they all ran to that hill, and they saw that cloud on top of that hill, and that was so strange because nobody ever seen anything like that except that, the guy who was able to share communication with her before. And then they saw this cloud. It touched the ground, and then this cloud went back up in the, just a little bit high, not way up in the sky, but just a little bit off the ground. And they saw a buffalo calf there, and it was a regular looking buffalo calf. And then they saw this buffalo calf. It walked towards them a little bit, then it rolled on the ground like it was going to play. It rolled around and it rolled around, and then it stood up again. And they looked at it, and it was red. Now it was a red buffalo calf. It walked a little bit towards them again, and the people were just speechless. They never seen anything like that before. And then the buffalo calf laid on the ground again, and he rolled and rolled and rolled some more, and it stood up, and now it was yellow. And the people were just really just an amazement. They were just astonished. And the buffalo calf walked really close to near their camp, and it went on the ground again, the fourth time. It rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled again. Then when it stood up, it was a white buffalo calf. Then it came to them, and when it got near their camp, at this time, the men were, they were given instructions, on what to do. So the men, at this point, they all looked down and they closed their eyes, because that's what they were supposed to do. That's what this lady told this man. That was one of the instructions. So they did that. The men looked down and they looked away and they closed their eyes. But the women were still allowed to watch. And suddenly you heard the women just, ma, just really in astonishment. And then right when the women were saying that, one guy, just had to see, So he turned around and he looked, and something hit him. Nothing touched him, but something did hit him inside. And he made a really strange noise, or something. And after that, he couldn't see, and he had what today they call cataracts in his eyes. And they, what happened was when he opened his eyes, she pushed smoke into them, and that smoke was never to come out again. And so that's how he had these cataracts for the rest of his life. So now she began to sing this song, and she walked around the camp. She was singing this song. She walked around clockwise 4 times. And then she came to the east entrance. And when she came in, then the men were allowed to open their eyes, but they were told not to look at her feet. So everybody, they followed the instructions, because they knew something was going on. This was something really special. So she came, and they noticed that she was carrying a bundle. And she walked up to the holy man, and then she laid this bundle out in front of them. And then she told them, she said, the Wakatranka have heard your prayers, and they know that your children are starving, and your grandmas and grandpas are really in need of food, and they are going to help you. And they wanted me to bring you this gift. And it's going to help you not only in just food, it's going to help you to be able to take care of your mind and your emotions and also your the things you do, and it's going to help you in all areas of your life. It's not going to just help you with your food. It's going to help you with everything in your life. And then she began to give them instructions. And then she opened this bundle, and there was this pipe. And it was just a plain looking pipe. And nobody had ever seen one of these things before. This is the first one. It was just a plain, simple pipe. And there was a second part to it. And she told him this was the pipe bowl, and the first part, the stem, that was the pipe stem, and it was some people say it was made out of a buffalo rib, some people say it was made out of ash or some kind of tree, but nevertheless it was the pipe stem, and this other one was the pipe bowl. And then she told him, this pipe bowl has the blood of your ancestors in it. And today they call that catlinite, and they get that from a place in Minnesota, and that's another story. But she told them that she gave them instructions, and she's on how to put this together, how to make it, and she said that all the men that were good men could do this. And she said that when you do something in front of a pipe, you have to tell the truth. You can't be making things up and telling lies and feeling negative and things like that. You have to be honest and really truthful when you're in front of a pipe. And she said it's going to be hard to live, but it's going to be worth it. And she said it's not a status symbol. It's not something that makes you better than other men. It just means you're humble. And your communication is between you and the Wakantanka. You're not supposed to put on a show in front of everybody. And she told him, when you carry a pipe, don't tell anybody that you do that. Don't say that. Don't brag about it, because if you do that, that Tungashilapi, the original spirits, are not going to like that. And they may cause something to happen that may hurt. And it may bring pain. So be humble. Be responsible. Don't be showing off. Don't be telling people you're a pipe carrier. So they all said this. And then she turned to the women and she said, you women, you have a sacred thing that is always happening in your body. And for that reason, these men need these things to be in balance with you. And so you don't have to carry a pipe until you pass the menopause, when your menstruation stops. After that, she said, you can carry a pipe. But before that, no, that's for the men. And then she started to, she talked with the people. She stayed with them for 40 days. And she really was just really loved by these people. She's also known as Wochbe. Now, one of the instructions that she gave was when the pipe stem and the pipe bowl are put together, when they smoke the pipe, that everything in the universe comes together. Everything. The pipe stem represents the plants. The pipe bowl, that represents the four-legged. And then the feathers represents the winged. And we are the two-legged. These are the four groups of the Wamakanshkan. All creation is Wamakanshkan. So when the pipe is assembled, and when it's smoked, all creation is uniting this, creating this frequency. And then when they smoke, that smoke is going up in the air, carrying the prayers of the people. Wohpe told him she would take that prayer in the smoke to the Wakantranka. Now, she also told him that when they are doing their ceremonies, she can come to them through the smoke. When they burn sage, she said she would come to them, and also to take the prayers to the Wakantranka. So she has this association with the purifying smoke of sage and the tobacco that's burned in the pipe. And she told them lots of things about the pipe. She told them that the pipe could represent a marriage, like the stem could represent a man, and the pipe bowl could represent a woman. You know, each piece by themselves is its own identity. That's how a relationship should be. A man should have his own identity, and so should a woman. And then there's times when you put the pipe bowl and the pipe stem together, and then you come together like that. And one is not better than the other. They both come together and form something new and special. That's our marriage. And she said that's how it is for a Lakota marriage too. You know, the man and woman, when they come together like that, they go into a new dimension into their lives, and it's like being a pipe. When the white buffalo calf woman came to the Itazipco-Lakota people, they already had some of the Lakota ceremonies already established. Now there are 7 major Lakota ceremonies altogether, and when she came, there were already 4 of them were already there, and she told the people that they were going to receive some more from different people, from different parts of the Lakota people, Dakota, Nakota people, and so along with this pipe, there was this circular stone, and it had 7 circles drawn on it, and that's what she told them, that the pipe is supposed to be used in all 7 ceremonies. Now she gave some final instruction concerning the pipe. She said that there were some things that still had to be attached to the pipe. And she said the next time they were in battle with the Crow Indians, that they were supposed to take hair from 4 Crow warriors, and they were supposed to cut 1 ear off of one of those warriors. Now with the hair of these 4 Crow warriors, they were supposed to put that through this ear, and they were supposed to attach this Crow warrior's ear to the pipe. Now there was also 12 eagle feathers that were, supposed to be attached to it as well. Now all these things mean something. And I know when a lot of people first hear that, they get really shocked, how could a holy woman like that tell them to go out and kill 4 guys and, do that? But it's deeper than that. There's something symbolic about it. In the Lakota culture, there's this saying, it's okay to cry, but don't cry too much. It's okay to laugh, but don't laugh too much. It's okay to be happy. But if you force yourself to be happy, if you're always thinking positive, you're going to get sick and you might die. And the same thing is true about being negative. You might die from that too. You can make yourself sick. And so you have to find a balance between the happiness and the sadness and the anger and the fear. You have to find a balance between those 4. And, it's okay, to be happy sometimes. It's okay to be sad sometimes. And then you process these emotions. It's good to appreciate blessings And sometimes you have to go through pain in your life, but you will come out of it as long as you take care of yourself and you help other people. You'll come out of it. And your life will be in balance. And so you're going to go through good times and you're going to go through bad times. Just don't try to stay on one side. The symbolism of this ear attached to the pipe has to do with that. And some people, it takes them a lifetime to understand that. When you are a pipe carrier, you're going to spend the rest of your life learning what that means, what that pipe means. You're not going to learn all of it in a short period of time. I have heard men in their 90s say to me that they have just now begun to understand what that pipe means. That's the way it is. That's exactly the way it is. She also told him that everyone is made up of 4 parts. One part being the body, another part being the soul, another part being the mind, and also the 4th part being emotions. And she said that when we take care of these 4 parts as best as we can, we build ourselves into a healthy person by beginning from within ourselves. Each of these 4 parts is connected to each other. So if we neglect one part, eventually the other 3 are going to become sick too. So she said it was very important that we take care of all 4 parts, that we eat good foods, healthy foods, and do activities to make our body strong. And that's how our ancestors lived. And she told us to take care of ourselves spiritually, and to be able to process our thoughts and our feelings. And she said when we do this, we build a healthy foundation inside of ourselves. And then nature projects however we are inside of ourselves out to the world around us. So when we take care of the 4 parts, we build an inner peace, and then nature projects that around outside of us. And this is how we are able to really live actively and to appreciate life and to appreciate the blessings that come to us. We are in balance with all members of creation, and we are also more able to face the challenges that come to our life. And when you take care of the 4 parts to yourself, the connections between you and other members of creation become stronger. So this is why it's really important to take care of ourselves. And she said when we don't take care of ourselves, if we neglect just one part of ourselves, we're going to make ourselves sick inside of ourselves. And then nature projects how we are to the world around us. And so a person who neglects one part of himself, he might see the world in a really negative way, and he's going to see something a different way. And she explained this is what happened to the 2 men who saw her that one day when the second man died. She said the first man, he took care of himself, and he was able to see her in a clear way. And the second man, he was kind of selfish. He was neglecting something within himself. And so when he saw her, he saw something different. So she said, however you are inside of yourself, that's how you're going to see the world. So if you want the world to be a beautiful place, it has to begin from within you. So, she gave these final instructions, and then it was the 40th day, and it was time for her to go, and everybody was sad, and the kids didn't want to let go of her, and the women, they began to cry, and even the men, they couldn't say anything, they just looked down, and then she began to sing this song that she sang when she came. And this time she went the other way. She went counterclockwise around the camp 4 times. And they were all allowed to watch her this time. She walked a little bit ways from the distance, and she rolled on the ground. And she got up, and it was a white buffalo calf. That white buffalo calf went a little bit further. It rolled some more, and it stood up. And now it was a yellow buffalo calf. It walked some more, getting closer to that hill. It rolled again and stood up. And it was a red buffalo calf. Then it walked up to the hill. It laid down, and it stood up, and it was a buffalo calf. And then this little cloud came down on the hill. It went, covered the buffalo, and you heard these sounds, really strange sounds, but good sounds, wonderful, but scary. Wakan. And then this cloud lifted back up in the air, and she was gone. So that's the story of the white buffalo calf woman. She's also known as Wochbe. She is the daughter of Shkan, who is the chief of the Wakantranka. She's a mediator between the Wakantranka and the people on the ground. There are 7 Lakota major ceremonies. When she brought the pipe, the Lakota people already had 4 of them. They were the Inipi ceremony, which is what some people call the sweat lodge ceremony. One was the Humblecha ceremony. That's the one where it's like crying for a vision on a hill. Another one was called the Tchatranka Loampi ceremony. This is the ceremony for girls who come of age when they get their first menstruation. And the other ceremony was the Hunka ceremony. This is the ceremony where people who are not from a blood relative family are adopted into that family. And I just want to make one small note about the Hunka ceremony. When a family hunkas someone who is not in their family, it just means that the new Hunka relative is a member of that family. It does not mean that the Hunka relative is a Lakota. So that's just a point that should be made clear. In Lakota culture, identity is made up of 2 parts. One part is your individual identity, and the second part is your cultural or tribal identity. And so there are 2 systems of teachings. One system concerns the individual part of one's identity, and the other system of teachings concerns the tribal or cultural part of your identity. Now, the Lakota ceremonies and Lakota spirituality, that is part of the cultural or tribal part of one's identity. Now, the teachings that involve the individual part of the identity, those can be shared with people from all over the world, because this individual part of our identity, this is what ties all creation together. But since the ceremonies involve the cultural or tribal part of one's identity, the Lakota ceremonies are only meant for Lakota people, and the teachings from the ceremonies are only meant for Lakota people. One expression that you hear a lot in Lakota culture is mitake oyas'in. That means all my relations, or we are all related. And what connects us to each other is that individual part of ourself. So that this is why the teachings that involve the individual part of one's identity can be shared with other nations. So mitake oyas'in, that does not mean that we can share our ceremonies with all people. That's not what it means. Now, when Wochpe told us about the 4 parts of the self, and that how we have to take care of the 4 parts, and that when we do, that creates an inner peace inside of us, and nature projects that out to the world around us, and we are able to be in balance with the world around us, and we are able to get along with other members of creation, and we are able to communicate effectively with other members of creation, and we are able to face challenges in life that come to us as well, and to fully appreciate the blessings that come to us too. And when you take care of the 4 parts to yourself, the connections between you and other members of creation become stronger. This whole process is called establishing and maintaining the 7th direction. The order of the directions are west, north, east, south, the earth, the sky, and the 7th direction lies within each of us, within each member of creation. So it is our responsibility to establish our 7th direction and to maintain it as well. So if we want a beautiful world to live in, it has to begin within each one of us. The teachings that involve the individual part of the identity, these are also called the 7th direction teachings. So mitaku oyas'in, all my relations, we are all related. What connects us all together is the 7th direction. And so the 7th direction teachings may be shared with everyone in the universe.
In Lakota culture, one of our most sacred items is the pipe. Now, this was brought to us by a lady. Everybody calls her white buffalo calf woman, and some people, they translate that saying "Ptehincha la Sanwi," which technically is correct, but that really is not her name. She goes by a different name. And this lady was just a messenger. This pipe was not her pipe, okay? I have to really stress that, because there's a lot of feminist women's lib people out there that, you know, they're always trying to say things like, well, you know, after all, you know, it was a woman who brought the pipe, but it was not hers. She was a messenger, and she was delivering it, but it did not come from her. I really have to stress that. The pipe was brought to the Itazipco Lakota people. It was not brought to the Oglalas or the Sicangu or other groups. It was brought to the Itazipco group because they were going through a very, very difficult time. And this the Wakantanga, which is an organization, as I said earlier, this they they knew that the Itazipco Lakota people really needed extra special help. So this is what they sent, was this pipe, and there was a lot of instruction given concerning that. That you have to always tell the truth in the presence of a pipe. You always have to. If you promise you're going to do something in the presence of the pipe, you better do it, because if you break that promise, that's what you really disrespected and dishonored the ancestors whose blood is in that stone. That's why it's sacred. Yeah, we have something called tum, which is the essence of your soul, and it's in blood. And in this cleansing, in one location, a lot of the people, our ancestors, they got smashed into that rock by the waves, of the flood. It was so strong. It's a really fast, flash flood, and it smashed the people into this part of the earth. And there was a rock there, so that they got smashed in there, just repeatedly pounded their bodies in there, and until their bodies mixed with that stone. And that's why that stone is considered sacred. Some people today, they have a false understanding concerning this. They think that it's just a rock. It's not sacred until you bless it. That's a lie. Because the stone is already sacred. It's already alive because of the blood of the Dakota ancestors who got smashed into that stone. Tum, that's what it's called, the essence of the soul. Tum is always awake. So that means the stone is sacred no matter what. It doesn't have to be carved into anything to become sacred. It's already sacred. Even if you just take a little piece of that rock, it's already sacred. And you're supposed to really watch yourself in front of that stone. You're supposed to, like I said, you don't be telling lies. If you make a vow to do something, you better do it, because if you don't, you're dishonoring the ancestors, and that's going to come back to you 4 times as strong and mess you up. So you're supposed to really be careful in front of that stone. And another thing is, you're supposed to speak either Lakota or Dakota or Nakota in the presence of that stone. You're not supposed to speak Navajo or Anishinaabe or any other tribe, or German or English or whatever. You're only supposed to speak either Lakota or Dakota or Nakota. The reason why, again, is because the blood of our ancestors is in that stone. So you have to speak one of the 3 dialects in front of them at all times. That stone is always awake. Yeah, that means it's alive. It's sacred because of the blood that's in there. Okay, that really, really needs to be understood. So this is a really important fact. Okay. And so you have to be careful, like some people, modern Indians today, that don't really understand what this means because of what I said just about 20 minutes ago, that Christian brainwashing that happened. They lost a lot of the understandings and protocol for this. So today, most Indians, they really don't know the full meaning of the pipe. And so they'll think that, oh, it's a cool thing if we're going to get married. Let's get married with the pipe, So that what some couples do is the man holds the pipe stem and the woman holds the pipe bowl, and then they tie buffalo leather strips around the man and woman's hands as they're tied to the pipe, thinking that this is going to make their marriage sacred. then they better not get divorced. Even if one cheats on the other, they better not get divorced because that's a big no-no. Yeah, you see that's dangerous. So you're not supposed to do that. That's modern Indians that do that because they don't have the full understanding that I'm giving to you right now. That's a dangerous thing. That's looking at marriage as something that will always be there, and that's false. In the real ancient Lakota world, divorce happened because people change. Sometimes in the relationship, one of the partners changes and the other one doesn't, and they can't live together anymore. So they just, okay, that's it, we're done, no big deal. Yeah, and in back then it was a community-minded way of living, where you had lots of moms and lots of dads. So there was no custody battle. All the relations still stayed in place. It's just that couple didn't live together anymore. But the child still had a lot of mothers and fathers. Your mother and her sisters are your mothers. Okay? And their husbands are all your fathers. And their children are your brothers and sisters. That's your mother's side. Now go to your father's side. Your father and all his brothers are your other fathers, and their wives are your other mothers, and their children are your other brothers and sisters. So even if a divorce happens, all these relations still stay in place. So you have a lot of moms and dads that love you. Yeah. So it wasn't such a big deal because people do change. Yeah, and so in Lakota culture, marriage and divorce are not a big deal. That's the Christian dualistic world where it's really a big deal and it favors the man. Yeah, and it perpetuates or influences young girls to fantasize about this fancy wedding they're going to have when they're growing up, marrying and marrying their Prince Charming and all that kind of thing. It just really perpetuates dualistic thinking, like that's going to last forever. But the fact is, sometimes things change, and you have to move on. You have to move apart. Otherwise, that's going to hurt the kids. Because if you stay together, that tension's going to be there, and the kids are going to feel it, and they're going to get emotionally stunted because of that. Yeah. So it's best to part. So for the sake of the children, it's just the reverse of what Christianity says. Yeah. So anyway, getting married with the pipe is a big no-no. You should not do that because that's not what it was designed for. Okay, that's modern Indians who think like that. Anyway, it's a very sacred item. And to take it out, there's a song for that. To put it together, there's a song for that. To put the tobacco in the pipe, there's a song for that. To prepare the tobacco, there's a song for that process as well. It's a very, very sacred thing. Okay, and this is you shouldn't have one unless you can speak one of the three dialects. You're not supposed to be speaking English in front of that. Some people say, well, as long as it comes from your heart. No. That's not good enough. See, Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, these words create certain frequencies that have to be there when you're working with a pipe. That's why you only speak one of those three dialects. Okay? That's the reason why. It's very sacred. So you don't speak English in front of it. And you don't tell anybody that you have it because it's sacred. So when somebody gets up and says, I'm a pipe carrier and I do this and I do that, that's breaking that sacredness. Because a man who does that is being prideful. And he's breaking that virtue called humility, wahwala. He's breaking that. He's not being humble. You never tell anybody that you have a pipe, because that's a sacred thing. So you don't go on Facebook and put your name and then in parentheses put pipe carrier Sundancer. When you do that, you're making those things common and you're showing off. You're not being humble. Nobody needs to know those things. That's only between you and the sacred beings and your family. That's not for Facebook. That's not for the internet. Yeah, that's not for the powwow. That's not for the, walking around the streets. This is something that's really, really sacred. So, what would your thoughts be if you saw an Indian guy in leather buckskin, eagle feather headdress, sitting inside of a bar where there's beer all over the place, and sitting there holding his pipe? He's not praying. He's showing it off to his buddies. What would you think after what I just told you? My conclusion is he doesn't believe in it. Because if he did, he wouldn't be doing that. If he really believed in the pipe, he would treat it as sacred. Yeah, he wouldn't be sitting in a bar talking about this. He wouldn't even be in the bar, period. Because when you're a pipe carrier, you're not even supposed to go inside of a bar, not even to just buy a pop, not even to use a bathroom. You shouldn't even be standing outside the bar. You walk around it, but you don't stay there because that's a lot of unhealthy energy in that area, and you don't want to shame the ancestors and dishonor them by bringing the pipe there. So when I saw a picture like this, to me, the guy was dishonoring the ancestors. This guy was a Dakota Indian that I just described. When I saw the pictures, it showed to me that he doesn't believe in it. He's just showing off. He likes being in a spotlight. Breaking the law of Wahwala, as well as compassion for the ancestors. He's dishonoring the ancestors by doing that. And he's probably one of those kind of guys that says, oh, it's just a rock. It has to be blessed by a medicine man, then it's sacred. That's bullshit. It's already sacred because the blood of the ancestors is in that stone. It's always alive. Yeah. So I saw that. It just disgusted me when I saw that photo. It wasn't even a cool picture at all. I think the person who took that picture thought they were really being cool, but it was not cool, not at all. It was a gross disrespect for the ancestors. And that's a very, very, very bad communication. Yeah, that's going to come back to him 4 times as strong. This is a very, very sacred thing, and it should not be taken so lightly. And so this, you can understand that this photo that I saw of a Dakota Indian guy dressed like a 1800s Indian, sitting in the bar with 2 other Indians, looking at this pipe. And they're obviously drinking beer. And to me, this was very, very, very disrespectful, especially to the ancestors whose blood is in that pipe. But in Lakota way, when you send out a communication, that comes back to you 4 times strong. And what he's sending out is a very, very, very bad medicine, very bad energy, and that's going to come back to him 4 times as strong. That's a natural law of generosity. Yeah? So this is. I just want people to be aware of that. People who think that, having a pipe is like getting a Bible. It's not the same thing. The Bible is just a book. Pipe is something way more than that. and it's not something we should treat lightly. It's not. What a lot of people do is they look at it from their perspective, and that's where you show the greatest disrespect, because you're not looking at it from the ancestral perspective. Yeah, so these are some points I just wanted to make. So for those of you who maybe you've seen things like this too, it's not right, to see someone selling a pipe. And some people make that argument. They'll say, "Well, I met a guy before. He's a non-Indian, and he said that, that he sells pipes, but he says he doesn't just sell it to anybody. He said he wants to get to know the person, so he knows the pipe is going into a respectful person." Says that if he didn't do that, he said this guy, that the customer would most likely buy a pipe from anybody, and it doesn't matter that, that from the customer's perspective, it doesn't matter as long as they buy one. Yeah. So he said, this guy that I was talking to, the seller, he said, "Well, the customer's going to buy it no matter what." And he said, I'd rather that they buy it from a good seller. And I still didn't agree. I said that, well, the bottom line to me is that you're making money. Yeah, that's the way I see it. That your argument is weak, I said, because you're still selling the ancestors into slavery. It doesn't matter if you're saying, well, I want to make sure that they get a good owner. It doesn't matter. You're still selling them into slavery. It's the same thing. So your reasoning is still selfish, and that doesn't sit well with me. But hey, you send it out, it's going to come back to you. Yeah? You send out that kind of unhealthy energy, it's going to come back to you 4 times as strong.